Imagine for a moment, your mind is not your sanctuary but your prison cell. The walls constructed of your own ceaseless thoughts, the chains forged from your relentless analysis. This is not metaphorical, it is the silent sentence many of us serve every day. You think, overthink, and think again, spiraling through endless corridors of what-ifs and if-onlys. Yet in this mental labyrinth, authentic living withers and dies. While your thoughts race, your life remains stationary. You become captive to the tyranny of your own consciousness, a mind that never rests, that dissects every possibility, until each path appears treacherous. Friedrich Nietzsche, that fierce philosopher of life and power, warned us with prophetic clarity. Excessive thinking isn't wisdom, but a sophisticated form of cowardice, a clever trap, a gradual assassination of the soul. The doer alone learneth, Nietzsche proclaimed in Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Yet how many of us have substituted learning for doing? How many have replaced living with theorizing about life? Look around you at the walking ghosts of our era. People move through space, go through mechanical motions, but few truly experience the raw electricity of existence. They're consumed by perpetual doubt, paralyzed into inaction as they search for absolute certainty, for guarantees, for that elusive, perfect moment that never arrives. And during this waiting, this analyzing, this construction of logical fortresses built upon foundations of fear, life escapes them like water through clenched fingers, moment by precious moment, opportunity by irretrievable opportunity. Their minds, those supposed instruments of liberation, have conquered them, yet they remain oblivious to their defeat. I speak directly to you, you who meticulously examines every potential consequence before making any decision. You who demands complete understanding before taking even the smallest step forward. You who has convinced yourself that preparation and analysis are substitutes for experience. You believe yourself prudent, rational, mature. You call it being responsible or thinking things through. But Nietzsche would call it what it truly is. You're fleeing from life itself, wielding thought as both shield and excuse, transforming it into your personal prison. Nietzsche recognized this with unflinching clarity when he wrote, "There is more wisdom in your body than in your deepest philosophy." Consider this brutal truth. Thought disconnected from action becomes poison. It's a venom that paralyzes rather than enlightens. Thinking without acting resembles training without ever entering the arena, a futile exercise in theoretical mastery. Like studying love's intricate theories without experiencing another's touch. Like memorizing maps without ever stepping onto foreign soil. Like inhabiting dreams detached from the rhythm of real heartbeats, from the pulse of authentic existence. Yes, thinking serves a purpose, a critical one, but only when it nurtures life rather than supplanting it. Nietzsche didn't condemn reason. He condemned reason that no longer serves vital living. In The Gay Science, Nietzsche lamented how many people have unlearned how to walk and speak because they've overlearned how to think. They've forgotten the intelligence of the body, the wisdom of instinct, the genius of spontaneity, all sacrificed at the altar of excessive cerebration. The problem isn't the mind itself, but allowing it to become your master, obeying it as though it were divine, permitting theory to paralyze instinct, letting logic entomb desire, allowing fear, disguised as intelligence, to convince you to remain immobile. Have you noticed your internal dialogue? The endless excuses disguised as rational thought? The timing isn't right. I need more reflection. I'm insufficiently prepared. What if I fail? What will others think? Falsehoods, everyone. Lies. Wearing wisdom's mask while reeking of fear. Nietzsche declared that those who wait too long to act forfeit the opportunity to live. The secret for harvesting from existence the greatest fruitfulness and the greatest enjoyment is to live dangerously, he proclaimed. Not recklessly, but with the courage to embrace uncertainty. Action requires no permission, only courage, determination, presence. Excessive thinking is a silent addiction, perhaps the most socially acceptable addiction of our intellectual age. Like all addictions, it offers the illusion of control while destroying you from within, cell by cell, dream by dream. You persuade yourself that thorough analysis prevents mistakes. But mistakes aren't the true danger. The real problem is immobility. The real tragedy is dying with your potential intact, your courage untested, your life unlived. The problem is confusing safety with living. Because authentic life has never been, will never be safe. It is by its very nature a perilous adventure. Without music, life would be a mistake, Nietzsche wrote, and life without risk is not music but monotonous noise, predictable, controlled, and ultimately meaningless. Consider the moments that have truly defined you. Were they perfectly calculated? Did they emerge from careful planning and risk assessment? Or did they burst forth from chaos, impulse, audacity, from that part of you that dared to act despite uncertainty? The mind may design an ideal future, but only the body experiences it. Only action transforms abstract possibility into concrete reality. Only risk makes it real. Herein lies the paradox that Nietzsche understood with terrible clarity. The more you think in isolation from experience, the less you truly understand yourself or the world. Analysis without action doesn't lead to wisdom. It leads to abstraction, to disconnection, to a life observed but never fully inhabited. When Nietzsche proclaimed God is dead, he wasn't merely making a theological statement, he was announcing the death of absolute certainty, of predetermined meaning, of guaranteed outcomes. He was declaring we must create meaning through our actions in a universe that offers no guarantees. The overthinking mind seeks those guarantees, those certainties, those assurances, and in doing so it misses the entire point of human existence: to create, to risk, to become. Because thinking without feeling is like sailing without a compass. You may analyze the stars, the currents, the winds, but without the immediate experience of the journey, you're simply adrift in abstractions. You lose direction, you disconnect from the visceral reality of your own existence. You analyze so much that you stop recognizing yourself. You become the algorithm of your own life, rather than its protagonist. You live in perpetual rehearsal, responding to scenarios that exist only in your head, preparing for a performance that never begins. Anxiety flourishes in this liminal space, this threshold between excessive thought and insufficient action, when possibilities multiply but none materialize, when the hypothetical drowns the actual, when you're caught in the purgatory between planning and living. Nietzsche diagnosed this as the disease of philosophers, but it's become the epidemic of our age, infecting anyone confusing contemplation with participation. The consequences are devastating: chronic insecurity, existential dread, and a peculiar form of paralysis that looks intellectually sophisticated but is, at its core, primitive. Fear: the more intricately you think, the more vividly you imagine failure. The more you envision catastrophe, the more certain you become of your inadequacy. The more convinced you become, the less you attempt. It's a closed system of self-sabotage, a maze with no exit, but the one you refuse to take. But Nietzsche offered the key: will. Not mere desire, not simple want, but will. That primal force that severs thought when it becomes self-destructive. Will is the lightning that splits the endless night of rumination. It's the energy that propels when the mind can only break. It's the defiant cry that shatters the paralyzing silence of, "What if I fail?" What is done out of love always takes place beyond good and evil, Nietzsche wrote, and what is will but love of life itself? A love so fierce it transcends the binary calculations of success and failure, of right and wrong, of certainty and doubt. Because failure isn't the enemy. Stagnation is. Failure is merely feedback, information for your next attempt. The true catastrophe is never attempting at all. As Nietzsche put it, the most common form of human stupidity is forgetting what one is trying to do. And what are you trying to do, if not live with authenticity and courage? Examine your existence with brutal honesty. How many opportunities have you sacrificed at the altar of overthinking? How many connections have you allowed to wither because you feared rejection? How many passions have you postponed, waiting for your mind's impossible approval? The mind, particularly the modern anxiety-riddled mind, rarely sanctions risk. It's evolutionarily designed to protect, not to fulfill, to survive, not to thrive. That's why you must learn to disobey it, to challenge its authority, to use it as the tool it was meant to be, not the master it has become. Nietzsche articulated this revolutionary idea: there is more wisdom in your body than in your deepest philosophy. The body possesses an intelligence the overthinking mind cannot access, an intelligence of instinct, of desire, of authentic need. The body knows when to advance and when to retreat, when to persist and when to yield. It's the hyper-vigilant mind that loses this wisdom in a labyrinth of what-ifs. It's the overthinking mind that fears imperfection. It's the analytical mind that recoils when the heart yearns to leap. Perhaps the most insidious effect of overthinking is how it severs your connection to yourself. The cacophony of analysis drowns out the quiet voice of authentic desire. So much mental noise obscures which impulses are truly yours and which are borrowed anxieties. You forfeit instinct, you surrender spontaneity. You abandon the hunger for direct experience that makes life worth living. You devolve into a spectator of your own existence, seated in the comfortable armchair of mental simulation, eternally waiting for a perfect script that will never materialize. But life isn't a script. It's improvisation in the face of uncertainty. It's making mistakes and learning from them. It's acting despite incomplete information, despite imperfect conditions, despite the absence of guarantees. Nietzsche spoke of the Übermensch, often translated as Superman or Overman, not as some superhuman entity, but as the being who transcends the limitations of conventional thinking. The Übermensch isn't someone who thinks more profoundly, but who acts with greater courage, who creates meaning through decisive action rather than endless contemplation, who transforms values instead of merely inheriting them. "I am not a man, I am dynamite," Nietzsche declared. He wasn't advocating destruction for its own sake, but the explosive power needed to break through the paralysis of overthinking, to demolish the prison walls of excessive analysis. The capacity to act decisively in a world with no absolute truths, that is the true strength Nietzsche admired. But here's the revelation few are willing to confront. When you think too much, you not only cease acting, you cease desiring. Yes, your very capacity for desire withers and dies. Desire cannot survive in the cold clinical environment of excessive analysis. Desire requires fire, not formulas. and you extinguish it with every questioning, every dissection, every attempt to impose logic on what is fundamentally volcanic and vital. Desire, when subjected to excessive rationality, perishes. Because desire isn't logical. It's primal, eruptive, irrational by its very nature. And when you fail to feed it with action, it crumbles to ash within you, leaving only frustration and nostalgia for a life you never tasted. The hyper-rational. Mind doesn't merely paralyze the body. It anesthetizes the soul. It steals your hunger. It domesticates your wildness. It transforms you into a safe, correct being, completely severed from your own life force. This domestication of the human spirit was precisely what Nietzsche despised. This submission disguised as prudence, this voluntary self-annihilation performed in the name of order, calculation, and so-called maturity. But understand this: true maturity isn't the slaughter of your impulses. It's learning to channel them without betrayal of your authentic self. Because real betrayal isn't directed toward others, it's directed toward yourself every time you censor your nature out of fear of imperfection or failure. Become who you are, Nietzsche commanded, not who you think you should be, not who others expect you to be, but who you are beneath the layers of social conditioning and intellectual paralysis. Let us venture deeper still. Consider what Nietzsche might call the cult of knowledge, how even the pursuit of understanding can become a sophisticated form of escapism. When knowledge becomes mere accumulation without transformation, it's worthless. Reading 100 philosophical treatises doesn't elevate your wisdom if it hasn't altered how you live. Knowing without changing is merely another form of stagnation, another clever disguise for cowardice. And deep down, you recognize this truth. Some part of you has already read, already listened, already understood the essential message, but it hasn't lived it. And until embodied through action, all that knowledge remains dead weight. Intellectual cargo that slows rather than accelerates your journey toward authenticity. Nietzsche anticipated this danger. Culture itself can become a prison when misused. When you gorge yourself on theories, brilliant ideas, and mental models without applying them, you risk becoming a museum, aesthetically impressive but devoid of life, movement, or purpose. A collection of beautiful concepts, certainly, but static, silent, cold. As Nietzsche asked in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, what good is all that lucidity if it doesn't illuminate your path? What value has clarity if it doesn't energize your steps? Thinking has evolved into a socially accepted narcotic. Like any addictive substance, it begins as pleasure and devolves into dependency, a subtle addiction, socially validated and even celebrated, but nonetheless an escape from authentic presence. Because obsessive thinking doesn't dwell in the now, it haunts the past you cannot alter and the future you cannot control. And while your mind wanders these temporal territories, your body withers in place untouched by experience. Now consider this brutal insight that cuts to the heart of our condition. The hyperactive mind isn't primarily seeking solutions, it's seeking to avoid emotions. Every thought becomes a distraction, a clever evasion of feeling because feeling is uncomfortable, because feeling forces recognition of your authentic self. And therein lies the true abyss, when you must face yourself stripped of intellectual armor, bereft of theoretical protection. Excessive thinking isn't a wall against external threats, but against your internal landscape, against your chaos, your sadness, your repressed desire. Because if you were to stop thinking, you would be forced to feel. And that, precisely that, is what you most deeply fear. Not error, not judgment, not even failure. What you truly fear is experiencing what you've been methodically burying for years beneath layers of analysis. He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster, Nietzsche warned. And when you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. The monster isn't overthinking itself, it's what overthinking protects you from, the raw experience of your own existence. Nietzsche recognized this dynamic. That's why he spoke not of understanding, but of transformation, not incremental improvement through reflection, but radical recreation through action. He advocated creating a new self from fire rather than from cold calculation, from the art of action, from risk-taking, from leaping without guarantees. Another peril emerges when thinking becomes identity. When you think excessively, you begin defining yourself by your thoughts rather than your actions. You identify with ideas, plans, and theories as though they constitute your essential nature, but they don't. You are not what you contemplate. You are not what you plan. You are what you do when no one is watching. You are what you decide when fear constricts your chest. You are the action you choose even when it causes pain. I repeat, Nietzsche's central insight: the mind must serve life, not replace it. Thinking without acting resembles breathing without living, an automatic reflex, hollow and potentially destructive. Because ultimately, every thought that fails to manifest, as movement putrefies within you, it poisons your spirit. It becomes dead weight that anchors you to inaction. And the more you think, the more thoroughly you convince yourself of your inadequacy, that it's too late, that you're insufficient, that you need another course, another book, another external validation. But you don't need more thought, you need disruption. You need remembering that life isn't an exact science, but a leap of faith. No one possesses all answers. No one has previously lived your unique life. There exists no universal manual, only your will, your courage to live without permission, to err without shame, to feel without filters, to act even when your soul trembles with uncertainty. Do you want liberation from your suffering? Then stop thinking so excessively. Stop waiting for certainty that will never arrive. Stop mentally rehearsing every possible outcome until all paths seem equally treacherous. True relief comes not from perfect understanding, but from movement, from action, from engagement with life's raw materials rather than its abstract concepts. Because action is the ultimate antidote to overthinking. Action transforms fear into momentum, theory into experience, possibility into reality. Action is the bridge between the mind and the world, between intention and impact, between who you are and who you might become. Authentic freedom doesn't reside in comprehending everything, an impossible task in any case. It lives in the courage to move despite incomplete knowledge. It's found in deciding without absolute certainty, in choosing a direction without knowing the destination, in leaping without guarantees, in failing without surrender, in persisting without assurance. Overthinking is a luxury you can only constructively afford when balanced with action. Without this balance, it becomes intellectual poison, cognitive quicksand, mental paralysis masquerading as prudence. Nietzsche didn't envision a world populated by motionless thinkers, but by dynamic creators, human beings willing to live with intensity, with will, with authenticity, without requiring the validation of perfect logic or universal approval, because logic can explain existence, but cannot experience it. Logic can dissect life, but cannot live it. Logic can calculate risk, but cannot embrace it. And life, real, a vibrant, meaningful life is not explained. It is felt, it is encountered, it is risked. He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how, Nietzsche wrote, but finding your why requires engagement, not just contemplation. It demands confrontation with reality, not just speculation about it. It necessitates the courage to act before you feel ready, because readiness is often just another illusion of the overthinking mind. You were not born to analyze your existence until it drains of meaning. You were born to create meaning through action, through presence, through the courage to live according to your deepest values rather than your most persistent fears. Were these you? Mind can be your greatest asset, but when untethered from action, it becomes your cruelest jailer. And sometimes the greatest intelligence is knowing when to silence its incessant chatter. So dare to act. Embrace necessary mistakes as the tuition you pay for authentic wisdom. Take calculated risks not because they're guaranteed to succeed, but because they're worthy of attempt. Speak your truth not because it will be universally embraced, but because it's yours to express. Pursue your desires not because fulfillment is certain, but because the pursuit itself gives life its savor. Don't wait for permission from your anxious mind. Don't postpone living until fear subsides. Don't analyze opportunities until they expire, because the mind that is not harnessed to the service of living will inevitably turn against you. And Nietzsche understood this better than most, having wrestled with his own demons of thought and inaction. True wisdom isn't found in perpetual contemplation, but in knowing when thinking has served its purpose, and then acting with passionate conviction, with awakened will, with an authenticity that requires no external validation. Because life doesn't reward those who merely think about it. It rewards those who engage with it, challenge it, shape it through deliberate action. If these words resonate within you, it's because some part of you already knows their truth. Something is stirring beneath the layers of analysis, beneath the sediment of overthinking. It's not merely exhaustion with thought, it's not just intellectual fatigue. It's that profound recognition that you've been alive in theory, but not in practice. It's the awareness that you've been existing on the surface, while life's depths remain unexplored. It's the realization that you think so compulsively that you no longer know whether you're living your life or merely simulating it, creating and analyzing models of experience rather than immersing yourself in experience itself. And here emerges the final dimension of Nietzsche's philosophy that speaks directly to our modern condition. The call to authenticity in an age of simulation, the demand for direct experience in a world of abstractions, the need for courageous action in a culture that rewards endless deliberation. Become who you are, Nietzsche challenged. Not who you think you should be, not who others expect you to be, not who your anxious mind can comfortably imagine you being, but who you are beneath the overthinking, the vital, willing force capable of transforming thought into action, potential into reality, fear into power. The choice is yours as it always has been. Will you remain a prisoner of thought, or will you become its master? Will you continue to analyze life, or will you begin, at last, to live it?